into the Title I funding.
Okay. So basically you believe in it that strongly, that it's making that kind of impact.
Yeah, the data is crystal clear that it's having a very positive impact on the students.
Fair enough. Thank you. And then my last question, we'll have a second, is so in prior workshops, budget workshops, we've seen the step chart on and what buckets could be considered to address the future budget budget constraints. Any updates or change from those previous?
No, there aren't any updates or modifications, changes to the stair-step slide that I know you're talking about, but we've again worked closely with Jim Terry at TEA to ensure that we provide as much information as possible as they continue to build what the plan will look like for the future.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Bluford Daniels.
Thank you. How long we had the ESSER fund page on the website?
Are you speaking of the
where you can track the spending, etc.?
I believe it went up towards the beginning of this school year. I don't remember the exact month or exact.
Last year.
And that's okay.
Mid-school year last year. Okay.
And that's my point. We're asking questions that we have access to, because it's on the website.
Not updated.
I didn't say it was updated. I said, how long has it been there? That was my question to Mr. House.
I believe in reference to updates, we have provided the updates as well, and we've even presented nationally. And
that's my point. That's totally my point, that it's there and available, as is our student outcome information that we should be focusing our budget questions on how to improve those campuses. We have opportunity with resources to improve outcomes for those student campuses. We're getting into the weeds of how to run the budget and asking. I mean, I know that we're supposed to be stewards of the money. I got that. I got that. But we also, our objective should be trying to concentrate on data that's available to show where the best opportunity is for student outcome, where that is, so that we can concentrate our efforts and our questions on that. What are we doing to improve those student outcomes? How much resources do they need? How much funding do we need to direct to those campuses? What programs do we need to support on those campuses for improvement? That's what we should be concentrating on. We get in the weeds with so many things. There's research that's available. It's there on the website. All we have to do is just take it upon ourselves to go and look at it. So those of you that go to the website, I looked at it before I even got on the board. And so I had an idea of what the concentration needed to be. Anything, if you have a flat and you go to buy a tire, naturally they're going to try to sell you all four, but you don't need but one. So let's concentrate on that one. Let's replace it and use replace two. Let's concentrate our efforts on that. Our conversation. Yes, the expenditures of ESSER funds are important, as I've stated before, because they've been directed for various.
That's time.
Is time already?
Thank
okay,
you.
I'll wait and come. I'll get right back to you.
Trustee Allen.
Thank you. Superintendent, I have a question. Basically, I need to know if I'm thinking correctly. So, Chief Reed, slide 10 about the recapture. This is my question. Let's just say this is our budget, and I drank a little bit out of it. So I'm going to say that this is the 10%, 8% that the state gives us. State gives us 8% of our budget. How much? What percent?
I don't have that committed to memory.
Okay.
Sorry.
But they give us a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, and the rest of this is property, the taxpayer dollars and federal funds. Now, my question is, when we get ready to do this recapture, and let's just say the state says you can have this much money. This is what you can keep out of all your funds. So when we get ready to do recapture, do we give the state some of our property taxes with that? Or are we just giving them back the money that they give us and then some extra money?
It's both. So in our case, in HISD's case, we receive money from the state through the available school fund, which is the school permanent fund.
Okay.
We in essence, turn around and pay all of that back, plus then a portion of our property taxes.
So the money that the state gives us, we give them all of that back,
Not all of it, just the available school fund.
the available school funds, and some of our money to give to other school districts that are supposed to be property poor.
Correct.
Okay. So I have another question that you might not be able to answer. So say this is lottery money, and the lottery supposed to give to the educational fund. From what I understand, is that when the lottery money comes in, the state will take back their money. And so essentially, we still getting the same amount of money, no matter how much money is put into the lottery. Is that right?
What are you trying to do to me?
You know what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, you are
Okay.
That is correct.
So no matter how much we put in that casino, we still are going to get the same amount of money.
That is correct.
That is correct. Okay. Then my other question. Is there anything from slide?
Oh.
My time is up.
timer works.
Okay. Thank you. I'll ask in second round.
Trustee Santos?
Thank you, President Hernandez, Superintendent House, Administration, for your presentation. And thank you, Dr. Cruz. The wraparound specialist is one of the wraparound services are one of the things that I take most pride in being on this board. My only regret is not being able to implement the entire school, community schools model that I wish we'd seen come to fruition. With that being said, Chief Reed, I am proud of the salaries that we have for our employees. In the last 5 budget cycles, we went from rank number 14, number 16. Now we are an actual competitive paying school district. And we've done that without putting too much of an increase for insurance premiums on our employees. We've raised the minimum wage from $12 to $14, which set precedents for the city of Houston and Harris County to move theirs forward. So with that being said, what are your plans, if any, to reduce class sizes and teacher salaries so that we remain competitive, not just in the pay increase, but academically, so our students that we use these ESSER dollars for Wi-Fi, and but none of that has helped. If you've gotten any feedback from teachers, there are more challenges now due to technology than there were before we even entered into COVID and online learning. So with the feedback that I've received from teachers, what plans, if any, do you have for reducing class sizes and baked into the budget?
Well, certainly it's a pretty loaded question, given that we'll be passing the budget on Trustee Santos.
Yeah.
So I can't necessarily answer or provide an answer in terms of what it's going to look like or what recommendations will be made by the new superintendent or the board of managers. But I think the data speaks for itself in terms of what we know about small class sizes and what it can potentially do for students within the restraints of the budget that we have. So long way around that question is, we don't know what that recommendation will look like.
So just moving forward, I would like to recommend that the early childhood education, speech pathologists are a huge thing that kids coming in that were born during COVID are having so much trouble acquiring speech and learning from each other. So the one thing that I'm asking, I know I'm not going to be here, but moving forward, baking that into your budget. 85% of my son's classroom has a speech pathologist. Like they are, that is, and okay. I'm going to move on. So what are your plans for a TRE, if any, in case that the state ledge doesn't do their part in fully funding public education, as Trustee Dr. Allen has demonstrated for us?
There's not a plan to move forward with a TRE in the next 2 to 3 weeks. I think the new administration will know, given this conversation, that it is an option. And I think they probably know that already. But of course, they have to study what the political waters look like, what the climate looks like in order to move forward to get the kind of votes that are necessary to pass the TRE as well. But it definitely was something that was a potential option as we looked at options for funding over the course of the last 6 or so months.
Right, and I'm hoping that we can emphasize how much to the new board of directors that come in that the TRE and the bond are needed for the future of our city and for our kids, because we're not going to be able to survive academically and or competitively to bring in enrollment and to educate our students. This is something that is sorely needed within our schools and our communities. Thank you, Superintendent House.
Sure.
Trustee Cruz?
Thank you. Okay, so I have a question because I know I had previously asked and the answer was that the ESSER dashboard was not updated. So is it currently updated, and if so, how often is it updated?
It is updated. I don't know when the last update was made, but I do know it is updated. Pam, do you mind coming up and sharing? Pam helps us, of course, with this information, and she might be able to provide some more updated information that
it's on there, sure.
that I might not have on the tip of my tongue.
Yes. Good morning. The dashboard was updated by April 24th. In the first semester, we updated almost every other month, but second semester, we begin to update it every month because we begin to really see the spending, especially in the tutorials and things like that.
Thank you. On page 4 of the Q&A, I asked for a matrix, and I don't see a matrix. Is that possible to get that shared?
Glenn, is that something that we saw and can provide via the Q&A?
Yeah, let me look at there's not a specific RACI chart or anything like that for programs. It was really more of working with departments and looking at needs and scores and so forth, but not a specific matrix that says yes or no, right? It's not like a flow chart or anything like that.
Okay. Yeah, so if you could share what you used with the board, that would be really helpful. On slide 18, I was a little confused, I think, on maybe how something was worded, so I wanted to be clear. So does the board approve this SS spending?
Every June, we bring the board item to the board. You accept the grant funds, just like just like we have grant funds that you accept every month, grants and donations. It's a board item that lists out all these budgets, and you accept the grants.
Got it. Okay, thank you. And then I know specifically for Title I, last year in our budget conversations, it seemed like there was quite a bit of amount of Title I that had been unspent year over year. And this year, y'all have shared that wraparound spending will be wholly coming from Title I. So what percentage, and because that's such a huge amount, what percentage have we not been spending and why?
Yeah, I don't have the percentage. I can get that to you. But our regular recurring amount is usually just over $100 million. So you can see here we probably have $30 million from prior years. But those dollars, the federal government has recognized that school districts are trying to spend ESSER. So there have been extensions in carrying over Title I dollars. So you've seen that number grow a little bit more than normal. But once ESSER goes away, of course, we will start to spend down those rollover funds from Title I as we get to the 24-25 school year.
So we have more excess in Title I now because of ESSER.
Yes.
But it sounds like prior to ESSER, from my understanding in previous board workshop conversations, not just this year, that there's always been an excess.
There has been, yes.
Why is that?
It's just unspent funds at the year.
Is it schools or departments or both?
It's a mixture, but the majority of it is in our campuses.
Okay, so, well, that just says lack of support to me. Okay, so slide 25. Chief Reed, I'm always trying to follow your explanations. I just want to make sure I understand, because if I'm looking at this, is it a total of all of that? Because you keep saying the top feeds into the bottom.
Right.
So break it down to me like I'm a 5-year-old.
Sure. What we're showing here is just these are the total allocations. So this is how much all these different funds will have in a budget. But what I want to just clarify is that there's $200 million this budget that's being fed from the other funds.
Say that last part one more time.
The $200 million of this budget is being fed to from other funds.
Where? What other funds?
General fund, nutrition services,
Okay, So that 200 million on the bottom. Yeah, I'm just clarifying. The 200 million on the bottom comes from the top. Okay, thank you.
Okay, and that's my turn for round one. For the 2019-2020 recapture, the recapture amount is much smaller. Can you remind me why it's much significantly lower than the rest of the years?
That was the first year of House Bill 3 from the 2019 legislature, the 87th legislature. So we actually started off with zero recapture, but we had the way the state did the hold harmless for the loss of attendance in 1920.
Okay.
We had a recapture payment that we actually funded from ESSER. So that's part of that $82 million in spend that you saw in ESSER 1.
Okay. Okay, and then my next question is in the Q&A. It says it's a question about leading indicators that we're measuring with ESSER. One of them is the rate of students to teachers in pre-K. I personally know of a pre-K classroom that was not able to fund a TA, which I believe we were told that that ESSER would fund a TA for every pre-K classroom so that the rate would be 1 to 11 instead of 1 to 22. But there are pre-K classrooms this year that schools are stating that they don't have the budget for that. Like Trustee Santos, I think that pre-K is vitally important for all students. So is there anything in the budget that's going to ensure that the rate of students to teachers in pre-K, I guess, not remains, but becomes lower than 1 to 22?
Thank you for that question, President Hernandez. There's no doubt that the importance of pre-K is extremely important, and the idea of bringing down that class size with the number of adults in the classroom is a major piece of that puzzle. I'm not aware of specific classrooms that may have a situation where there's a shortage of a TA. We can very easily take a look if we get the name of those schools, those classrooms, to find out what the situation is and see if there's any support that can be provided. Glenn, any additional information you want to provide there?
No, we do have dollars in ESSER for that 11 to 1 ratio. So it'd be nice to know if there's any particular campus, which one.
I submitted it as a board referral, and the response was the school doesn't have the budget for a TA. Is there anything in the future that could be done to remedy that, since ESSER's going away?
I don't have an answer for that at this point in time, Robert. That's going to be a discussion because, again, that is an item in ESSER for that 11 to 1 ratio, and we would have to find funding to continue that.
Is just from do you have any ideas of where that money would come from for the future?
Not at this point.
Okay. And then with on slide 14, the 311 for next year, do you know what percentage of that is salaries versus like resources?
No, I don't have that off the top of my head, but we do have it in the plan.
Okay, thank you. We will go to round 2. Trustee Dygard.
Thank you. And thank you, Trustee Bluford Daniels, for supporting the idea that we need to make sure that our funding is spent for student learning outcomes. And yes, we have an ESSER dashboard, but it doesn't have any of the stuff from research and accountability on it. It's just raw numbers. And so we have spent 485, we've spent 327 million. We allocated 485. There's some big buckets, like there was one that jumped out at me that was about student enhanced data collection and analysis of student re-engagement. Like, just as an example, $350,000 that Is that just something you haven't spent and you are going to spend, or that you're going to allocate someplace else?
Pam and Melanie, you guys want to?
And not to be specifically, but that's just at the top of the list. There's several like that where we have not severely, but we were significantly spent less than what we allocated, or we didn't spend anything that we allocated. And are you going to be adjusting where those allocations are going?
So I think ongoing adjustments, come on up, Melanie, if you want to share some insight, ongoing adjustments, because spending is still happening, quite frankly. But Melanie can share some additional insights around the question.
Yes, I do want to just go back to share in regard to the ESSER dashboard. The research and accountability information around that data is on the research and accountability website. And so that is a separate dashboard from the ESSER, or that's a separate link from the ESSER dashboard. The ESSER dashboard provides the data around the funds that were allocated, the amount spent, the amount available, et cetera, and that is updated as well. So it's on the research dashboard. Now, in regard to looking at, can you restate the question again in regard to?
As long as it doesn't count against me on time.
Sure.
So, you've got funds allocated and funds spent or encumbered. Are there going to be adjustments in the allocation column where you're going to move them to other buckets where you are currently spending well below what was allocated?
Yeah, so if you look in the swim lanes that we have on this timeline, we, under the second swim lane from the top, the department stakeholders, as we do quarterly budget and metric reviews, we actually are going into now our end of year review. We have mid-year reviews with them. We do look at not only the implementation of the programmatic pieces, but we also look at their budget and walking through their budget, looking to see what is not spent, what is available, and what is earmarked to be spent maybe in the spring. For instance, some of them are stipends. And so we're going into actually next week looking at our end of the year ESSER reviews, where we are looking at, what was spent, what was what they initially intended to spend on, and what is still remaining, talking through why that is, and then being able to bring that back to the superintendent, cabinet, and the district stakeholders in order to make determination about reallocation. So we're in that process now.
Okay. I want to give a shout out to Jim Grady. You have been an invaluable part of this process. I hope TEA and the new board and new superintendent continue to see your value. It's been really, really helpful. Can you help me understand how fallout is estimated? Like this I see 70 million is estimated for future years.
Yeah, so the current year, let's start with the 105. That's where we have, 43 days left in the school district, or school year, sorry, or this fiscal year, rather. School is ending, I guess, in another week or two. So we have a good idea of where monies have been spent and where they're not going to be spent. And so that 105 is probably is a pretty good number. Then when we look into the future, projecting it into the future, it's based on some past history before the pandemic, and it's also taking into account, it's almost an analytical exercise of looking at data. You've got data that occurred during the pandemic and then data before the pandemic, and it's a best guess for now. It'll get refined. We're looking at vacancy rates, some other tools that the district can employ going forward to get a more pinpointed number on that. We're using 70 now as a best guess, but it will get refined as we go down the road.
And when you say refine, that theoretically reduce that so that in any given year, our revenue is actually being invested in our students and not just sitting there dormant.
That's right. The goal would be to have zero fallout. Not have this concept of fallout, have a budget that is actually, there's some variance, there's some give and take, but not have so material of a fallout number.
Yeah. Okay. I appreciate that. And then follow-up question about wraparound moving to Title I are we now using these additional, like that we weren't using these Title I dollars and now we're using them I don't quite understand how we've been leaving that money on the table for so long. Help me understand that equation a little better, please.
Sure. As was indicated earlier, most of the funding, and we can provide exact numbers, that was being left behind was from campuses. So we did work with campuses, in fact, this past year on some strategies to improve the usage of title funding. Again, as it was also shared, I think ESSER in some ways has exacerbated the need for that. But what we did is that we looked at, and actually working with Mr. Grady's office, looked at multiple years of data to see where we ended. And typically what would happen is that any unspent funds would carry over into the next year. As Chief Reed also indicated, because of ESSER, the federal government has been more gracious in allowing to do that. But we want to make sure that schools are utilizing the funds in ways that are going to support student outcomes, which is when we did that analysis and we started looking at it, we realized that there was really an underlying structural opportunity to leverage those recurring title funds to cover wraparound. And that's why the decision was made to put it there, because we realized that just given historical trends, the money was there. And we want to use it in a way that's going to support kids like we know what wraparound does.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It is mind-boggling to me that we are talking about how much we need money, and yet we're leaving money on the table. Thank you.
Trustee Allen?
Thank you. I'm going to skip over my second question and go to my third question. Let me see, has my time started? I'm going to piggyback on Trustee Bridget Wade's question about the ACP program. So it's my understanding that anyone would agree that wants to teach can apply to get a teaching certificate completely paid for by HISD while they're being paid a full-time teaching pay, instead of going to teach Texas teachers and Teach Us Texas and I Teach. They can apply in HISD and get it paid for free.
That's correct.
Thank you. Let me go to the next question then. All right. Back to yes, because the state is saying they have a surplus, and that surplus kind of comes from some of our money. And it is slide 15. Is there anything on slide 15? No, it's not slide 15. Slide 25. Is there anything on slide 25 they cannot touch? Like anything that we get to keep?
When you say they, you mean?
State.
State, okay. Chief Reed?
So the general fund is primarily driven, of course, by state funding formula. Debt service.
That's this formula.
Right.
Okay.
That's right. Debt service, of course, is driven by the debt that we have and what we've got to pay back. Nutrition services is driven by federal regulations, right? And so is, of course, ESSER and ESSA. And then capital projects fund is driven by bond, whether or not we have authority to sell bonds and do these capital projects. So I'm not sure I fully understand the question, but the majority of what is structured under statute of how we earn dollars is in the general fund.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that in my head, I knew that some of that surplus they have over there is come from our property taxes. Yep. Next question, number 4, Superintendent House. The 44 parents over at MLK that we were doing on this, are they going to get an answer from whether or not they're going to be able to stay at MLK Element Pre-K Center?
We don't have an answer at this juncture in reference to
okay, thank
MLK.
you.
Yeah.
Trustee Guidry?
Okay, so the 82 million from ESSER funds that had to go back to the state in 2022, I think I'm following up on somebody else's question. I don't remember who. Do you remember that question and that response? So from the money the federal money that was given to HISD off the top, 82 million had to go to the state?
It was about 75. The remainder of that was mainly private schools.
So from the HISD money, 75% went to the state and the remainder to private schools.
Right,
75 million.
So in our federal grants, we are the fiscal agent for federal ESSA dollars and other dollars that go to private schools, so they flow through us. So all of our grants have or federal grants have some portion of private dollars that flow through us. It's not our allocation to spend, but theirs is included in our allocation.
So then the state receives all of its monies back. No matter what comes into HISD, the state gets his monies back.
So the state is the fiscal agent for the federal government in this case. So they don't get to just keep, Title I dollars, for example. But in this particular case, the hold harmless that we got from attendance,
right,
back in 1920, they did that using ESSER dollars, and school districts should decide either to use ESSER 1 to fund that, or districts could use their own fund balances if they wanted to back at that time. But most districts, pretty much every district, used ESSER because that was not a good option.
So, generally speaking, how much recaptured does HIS do, like, a year? Just
it's right here.
Those are the actual numbers.
Oh, you're right. Those are so 900 million. Okay. My head is spinning right now because the state is getting all of this money and our kids are not getting it to use for education. So
I think that was your time.
there was money left behind by campuses from the ESSER funds, Mr. Superintendent?
Let's start it over.
Chief Reed?
There are unspent dollars in ESSER, and some of that is from campus funds, yes.
So then I'm interested to know which of these campuses are leaving money behind, and if there's money left behind at a particular campus, can it go to another campus who doesn't have any funding to continue the rest of the year?
Right, so that's part of the discussions right here, right, on how we can potentially reappropriate dollars that we're not spending. So those conversations occur with superintendent, cabinet, as well as other district leadership.
So is that something that could happen in District 9? Because I know quite a few campuses that does not have enough money to make it through the year. Is that something we could consider, Mr. Superintendent?
Of course, at this juncture, with 2.5 weeks in the administration, we will pass that information and concern on to the next administration.
Thank you, Trustee Gidget.
That and specifically, Worthing needs some CTE dollars, please. Thank you, sir.
Trustee Baker?
And thank you. Inquiring minds wants to know with regards to the ESSER funding. On slide 14, I see where we have went through ESSER 1, first grab 2 and 3. And first question, will there be an ESSER 4, Superintendent House? Okay, well, leads me to my next question. So
not that we know of. Okay. At this juncture, of course, these are dollars that are precipitated from the federal government, and if the federal government came back in at some point, a year from now or even further down the road, and did something similar, that could occur, but that is not notification that we've received thus far.
Thank you for that clarity. For those that are shaking their heads, no. So seeing as of now that there may be an end in sight, we know that ESSER brought forth additional positions along with services. My question is, will there ever be a portrait that reflects the budget that we had pre-COVID?
Can you restate your question?
So once ESSER's gone, and I know that it kind of expanded the budget to where it is now, will there ever be the budget that we had working back? And I'm not saying go backwards, but, to work the portrait of the budget pre-COVID before it was ballooned by the billions of dollars for the ESSER funds.
Chief Reed?
Yeah, so once ESSER is no longer here, trying to get back here, it will still look like this right here, but ESSER just won't be there.
Okay.
Was that the question? That 270.64 will no longer be there as we move into 24-25.
So, okay, just to clarify, will that leave us in a bigger deficit, right?
So it really depends on what we want to try to bring into our general fund. So it's not 270 million because we can't just bring 270 million dollars in costs in, but it depends on what decisions are made next year for the 24-25 budget.
Right. I know this question's probably been asked before. I'm just clarifying. So that means that possibly wraparound services, other positions may be cut because we did hire people with the ESSER funds, right?
So remember, right now, the wraparound specialists are in Title I. So they would still be under ESSA.
What I mean is that positions that were brought on due to ESSER funds. Okay.
Correct.
So we have to look at that when we get to that juncture.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. I yield.
Trustee Cruz?
Thank you. Can we go to slide 4, please? And my question, following up on this fallout conversation. So when we adopted our budget and what was still on our budget amendment this month was a 70 million fallout estimate, and now the fallout estimate is 105 million, but then we go back to 70 million. If memory serves me correctly, our fallout is always more than we think. So why are we staying in the 70 million estimate again for next year? Like, where did this extra money come?
Chief Reed?
So part of that is, if you remember, this year, we gave or allocated about $50 million in ESSER to schools. There was an additional, I think, $12 million we allocated under Title I. As ESSER's dollars are starting to diminish and disappear, we feel like that's going to put more pressure on the general fund, and we're expecting to see that number start to drop. And the vast majority of this is under salaries. So we're also hoping that we can start filling some vacancies going into the next year as well. So it's a mixture of several different assumptions.
Okay. And then on the next slide, slide 5, our total ending fund balance is now estimated to be 927 million. When we adopted our budget, it was 852 million. So where is the excess?
The excess was from the year end, from 21-22 unspent dollars. So we didn't know that at adoption last year.
Is that in addition to the fallout?
It's in that number. It doesn't increase these numbers at all.
So like the fallout number, that goes into this fund balance? I'm trying to understand what the difference is.
If we have more than $105 million this year, then it will increase the fund, the unassigned or the instructional stabilization fund balance.
Yes, but like in June 2022, we adopted our budget, and the projected total ending fund balance was 852 million, and now you're saying it's 927 million. Way more money. Why?
Because we did not know, we were not done. We had not finished our final the year closeout. We didn't know what that number was actually going to be. We didn't know that until November of last year.
Is that the case every single year?
Yes, it will be.
Okay, so my concern is that this is ongoing, and we keep wanting to take money from schools, and schools are not spending their money adequately and efficiently, and we still have almost half of our students at 3rd grade that cannot read. And so I'm just concerned that this is like this ongoing problem that we just keep not addressing. And I've been asking for a CCMR spending analysis that would yield revenue through the CCMR outcomes bonus funding. Been asking for months. This not only provides additional dollars, potentially millions to the district, but it better prepares students for post-secondary success. It requires strategic investment and certainly not cuts. Can I have an extra time to finish?
Thank you. Trustee Bluford Daniels.
Thank you. I want to just reply back to Trustee Dygar's comment. I'm looking at Superintendent House, I'm looking at the ESSER website on HISD, and it does show an update on there continuously from the last time. It shows today, updated today. So I just want to inform everybody that it is there and it is updated. The other thing is, I wanted to ask about, I thought perhaps that, Trustee was trying to demonstrate her LSG training, her coaching training or something for us. So, but the other thing I wanted to ask about was on page 21, the TERS dollars that was spoken of. Has there been an increase in those dollars, those TERS dollars last year or this year because of the fact that we've got the average home increase and the gentrification that's going on in the various communities, all over the city? How has that impacted us? Is it positive by more money coming in?
No, most of those contracts are based on a fixed rate. So as the values go up, we're still only we're only sending to the city of Houston based off the contracted tax rate, and then we're getting back on the same formula. So those dollars have not continued to grow every year as far as what we send back to the city. Sorry.
So the increase in the home cost is not helpful for the district in general. In other words, if the house goes up, if the cost of the home goes up, then surely we should get more money from the TERS.
No, because it's based off the contract. So the TERS is a whole separate program. It has nothing to do with really our retainable resources in the district. That is just based off of when we collect taxes on properties that are in that zone, right? They pay their taxes, we collect those taxes. But we don't pay those taxes back at the current tax rate. We pay it back at a rate that was agreed upon 20 years ago.
Oh, I see. So it doesn't matter that okay, I got you. I got you. It makes no sense. We need to renegotiate that. But also, too, is there an indicator? I know that for HCAD, they had 393,000 total protests last year. And this year, in 5 months, they've got 381,000 protests. So how is that going to impact us overall?
So we factor that in on mainly our debt service revenue. So we assume that we're going to lose some value. So we budget a lower revenue amount.
Okay.
In the general fund, it's just going to, once they start doing the protests, they start lowering values. What it will do is just lower our recapture.
Okay, it'll lower the recapture because I think, okay, good, because I think Trustee Wade asked about that. So that's good, potentially that recaptured with those indicators that Trustee Allen had over there, all her little water bottles and Post-its and stuff. So that's going to help us overall have to send less money back to the state for the recapture. Okay, good, thank you. I yield the rest of my time. Okay, well, I finished then.
Trustee Wade?
Thank you. Okay, my question is, so in this slide 25, one of the latest developments from the state, if I'm correct, is some security fund, safety and security. So what do we know from that? Yes, thank you for the slide. So I see in the below where you have all the different, or actually above, where the ESSER funds, will there be eventually a fund that has to deal with safety and security?
And I don't remember the exact number, but I believe it was 7 point some odd million that came in from the state in terms of safety funds. At some point in the 23-24 budget, there will be a reflection of what it looks like. Glenn?
That was actually accepted for 22-23. I can't remember if it was March or.
Right.
But we did. But anything additional right now, there is of course legislation out there for changes in the school safety allotment in the general fund. But right now there is nothing additional.
So that's in general fund.
Safety the school safety allotment is what you accepted. I think back in February, March was actually a grant of about $7.7 million.
Okay, so then that would fall under that lower section.
That's actually not up here because that's a grant that's not known at this time. So all we show are the entitlements that we know we're getting, but we don't know what grants we're going to be getting next year and be bringing to you every month. So we make no assumptions about new grants.
Right. Okay. Thank you. That was something in my heart. Okay. And then my other question about the fallout. So beyond teacher vacancies that happen every year, non-filled positions. So we talked about the shopping carts issue at the end of the year on our last meeting. So because that's part of fallout, is unfilled shopping carts correct?
Well, unspent dollars.
Unspent
not
dollars.
Even creating a shopping cart, right? So.
Or they haven't created a shopping cart. So, all right, I'm just trying to better understand the shopping cart fallout to teacher, all the different things. So it's not really a question. I'm just trying to get some clarity. Thank you.
Trustee Allen? Thank you. Superintendent, I know that when we have our ESSER positions, the people are told that this money is 2-3 years. When we have waiver positions, the employees are told this is a waiver for 1 year. I was thinking back when we were talking about those one-time funds, and you said that those people had positions were funded, that those one-time fund positions that were funded were told that their positions were on one-time funds. Thank you. Trustee Santos?
Thank you, Vice President Guidry, Superintendent House. Superintendent House, can you give specific details about the success of wraparound and its impact on attendance and academics, please?
Sure. I'll let Dr. Madney, since some of the research was done out of her department, kind of share what it has looked like. And Dr. Castillo, you're more than welcome to come up and share some insights with her.
So with the wraparound services, Dr. Castillo's team and my team work hand in hand on doing those evaluations. And we work with her team and the data points that they have in Purple Sense and look at how we can see the effectiveness, not only academically, but all of those non-academic pieces that are so important to our kids. So we look at that and we do an evaluation every year to ensure that we're keeping up with making sure that we're allocating correctly and that we're continuing programs where they need to continue.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. And as an added layer, we also look at the HERC data to then compare that and contrast with what our own findings are showing and see if it is consistent so that we can then plan accordingly.
So the success in terms of students in poverty receiving their needs met so that they can learn, do you have any more details on any of that?
Yes, so the whole goal is to ensure that we can support all the non-instructional areas of our students, their well-being, so that they can be ready to receive the academic piece. And so ensuring that they have not just, like supplies and being able to connect with a trusted adult that can walk them through the different resources that I have, but we have also added additional tools in different schools, including like telehealth, not just through the Hazel Health piece that we have, but we have other partnerships in several schools and local medical organizations like Memorial and TSHAD that allow us to provide that and extend that support to our students. So again, their well-being is taken care of so they can be ready to absorb the academic piece of it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Castillo and Dr. Matney. Mr. Superintendent, can you give me the progress in retaining and hiring teachers for the coming year due to the pay raises that you've helped us get?
Provide to you, let me make sure I understand your question. Provide to you the projected?
No, the progress that y'all have made in retaining and hiring teachers for the coming year, all the work that we've done these last few years, specifically in terms of retaining our teachers.
Okay. So we do have, Mr. Grant Skinner, if you'd come on up, we do have had an opportunity to get some data back from teachers that have committed, and I think that's what I'm hearing you ask, who has committed, what's the percentage of the teachers that have committed and taken advantage, and whether there is still a landing pad where teachers can provide a notification of whether they're going to be staying to receive that stipend that's been committed
and how
to.
This has set us up for success, right? I just want to make sure that we are honoring our taxpayer dollars and putting our values, our money where our values are.
Mr. Grant Skinner.
Sure. Offhand, I can share a couple of things. The first is we had a Commit HISD program for teacher retention that we initiated last spring. It was available to everyone in classroom teacher roles, and teachers could sign up to stay with the district at least through 2025. And if they did that, they were eligible to receive $5,000 over the course of several payments. So from last year, there are about 6,500 teachers who signed up last year and continue to be here as part of that commitment. This year, the superintendent decided to make that same opportunity available to first-year teachers in the district who did not have the opportunity to make that commitment last year, and about 1,500 more teachers signed up for that and received their first payment in March. So together, that's 8,000 of our teachers who have actively committed to stay with the district through 2025. The second thing I can share is we had an intent to return survey in February and March of this year. It's the first time the district has, at a district-wide level, asked all teachers to indicate their plans for the next year. About 3/4 of our teachers responded to the survey, so that's a really high response rate for such a survey. And of those who responded, 90% said that they intend to remain with the district next year.
That's great work. Thank you, Mr. Grant Skinner and Superintendent House. Can we move to slide 18? I want to ask, when did we move from educating the whole child? You cannot teach reading in isolation. That is pedagogically unsound. You want kids to read, reduce class sizes, provide social services to help parents, give them the opportunity to teach their kids. Title I, Part A, economically disadvantaged, $142.6% of $142.6 million. That's over 50% of federal dollars that we get in are for socioeconomically disadvantaged students, poor kids, right? This is showing where the need is at, and this is what's showing what you want your third grade reading goals to be met, Trustee Cruz. This is what we need to focus on, but apparently that's not it for you right now. So my point is, Superintendent House, we want this, the wraparound specialists, those are people that help bring in these resources. We need to be able to teach our students. I cannot tell you enough, Chief Reed, coming in, we need to reduce class sizes. We have, Mr. Grady, a problem that's going to come in that y'all can't foresee because y'all are not there yet. Students that are going to be future HISD students are going to need those additional supports. They're going to need smaller class sizes. They're going to need an
Thank you, Trustee Santos.
Thank you.
That concludes our workshop discussion. Thank you, Superintendent House and all of the administration.
I have a closed session budget question. It's a legal question.
The board will now adjourn to closed session under Chapter 551 of Texas Government Code, Open Meetings Act, subsections 551.004, 551.071, 551.072, 551.073, and 074, and 076, 551.082, 551.0821, 083, 084, 089. Should board final action, vote, or decision on any matter considered in the closed session be required, such final action, vote, or decision shall be taken at the open meeting covered by this notice upon the reconvening of this public meeting or at a subsequent public meeting of the board upon notice thereof. The board has adjourned to closed session at 12:22 p.m.